So my name is Pete, and as the introduction mentioned, I specialize in creating strategic messaging. Basically, I use principles from neuroscience to build messaging for companies. It's based on how the brain works, and you optimize for that. I've been doing that for about 7 years, three of which full time, and it is the only thing I do. I highly specialized in this field. I'm not a brain scientist by any way, shape, or form. Actually, I started out as a technical guy in the graphic arts industry, and then I moved into roles like pre-sales and then sales and business development that I did at Apple for about 4 years. Moved into marketing at Showpad, and then for the past couple of years, I've been doing messaging full time. Um, if there is anything I would say that I learned from all of those roles, it's basically this, right? The better story wins. You can have a fantastic product, you can have a great team, you can have a unique corporate culture, and still be beaten by a company with a better narrative. Seems unfair sometimes. But you take a narrative to market, you don't take a product to market. People buy based on the opinion they formed of you during the whole process, the whole buyer journey before they put ink on paper. And articulating value in most cases is actually more important than creating it. And your messaging is that narrative. Your messaging is really everything you say about yourself. It's what marketing says to its audience. It's what sales says to prospects. It's what customer success says to customers. And I build that messaging with neuroscience. So that's a really brief introduction. Let's dive into the creative proposals, persuasive proposals. I'd like to share about 6 key insights with you. There's many, many more, but our time is limited and I want to be respectful of that. Let's start with the first insight. Your proposals as a freelancer are your storefront. And it might be difficult to realize this, but people really don't buy what you do. They don't buy your skills. They certainly don't buy your time. They don't buy the work that you do or your focus. What they really buy from you is the effect of what you do. So it's very important to keep in mind when you're building a proposal what the outcomes will be, what the results will be, and how you will define your value. Now, bear in mind, this is not a firm commitment. It's not like a guarantee. If you can do that, great. By all means, do it. I work together with an agency in Antwerp that does just that. They do digital marketing with performance guarantees. But what you need to do is, without going too far in the guarantee side, is to give them an idea of what the effect of your work will be. So you want to describe the outcomes for them. And your proposal is really a preview of what your customers or clients will get. And a company that's really good at doing this kind of stuff is Apple, of course. When you walk into an Apple store, you get almost like a preview of what the using a device by Apple is going to feel like very minimalist and very clean and very thought through. And we can do the same thing as freelancers. So if you're a digital marketer, you'll want to show them a preview of what your finished work will look like. So if you're a digital marketer, give them a preview of the dashboard that they will get every week from you, for example. If you're a photographer, include some really cool images and really nice images of your best work in that proposal. If you're a copywriter, write down some paragraphs. Show them that you can, write really compelling copy with a good tone of voice in it. If you're a designer, make your proposal just absolutely jaw-droppingly gorgeous. I worked together with a branding agency in Antwerp called Can Design, and their proposals were just amazing. It just is so, so beautiful. But for example, what they get from me is they don't get anything beautiful because I build messaging. I don't build copy. So they get bullet points, which is what I will be delivering. I'll get them talking points and discussion points. And I don't want them to be confused and think that I'm a copywriter. I can do copy, but I'm a very expensive copywriter. So you want to make sure that your offering includes something that is a preview of what they will get at the end, because your proposals will set expectations. And what you want to do is avoid cognitive dissonance. And cognitive dissonance, some of you may know this already, is a state of mind that occurs when new information conflicts with what you already had in mind. And what you had in mind would be, this is what I'm expecting. And new information would be, this is what I got. If it's not the same, you get cognitive dissonance. So cognitive dissonance is equal to unpaid invoices, right? People get something else than they expected, you can expect a discussion on payment of invoices. So core principle number one, make sure that you use your proposal as a storefront. Second key insight, your proposal should be like the Spice Girls. Now, this is a term that I dropped in a podcast a while back, and it seems to resonate with people because everybody keeps talking about it. What that means is if you're pitching or if you're building a proposal for a specific organization, the concept of value that they have is different at different levels in the organization. For small businesses in B2C, it's not very difficult. You're talking to the decision maker, they make the decision or they don't. If it's a one-man person, an entrepreneur, you offer something and they either buy it or they don't. For slightly larger companies, still small, medium business, it's more about you pitch to one person, they need to get approval from another person, and you can go forward. But once you start pitching to corporate, it becomes a very complex thing because your pitch needs to be seen at different levels. It needs to be seen at an operational level, people that are doing the work, the individual contributors. It needs to be seen at a technical level, which is the management level, and it needs to be seen as a strategic level, which is owners, CEOs, VPs, etc. And value is different to each of them. So at the bottom layer, at the operational layer, it's all about quality of life, efficiency, speed. If it's one level up in tactical and management, it's all about efficiency and ability to execute and cost reduction, et cetera, because they're budget holders. And if it's at strategic level, it's all about longevity of the company, survival of the company, growth, shareholder value, et cetera. So if your CTA, for example, on a website is, get a demo and you're pitching to strategic people, they're going to ignore that because they're not interested in how it looks. They're interested in what that's going to mean for the balance sheet. So in larger organizations, you need to have a clear understanding that you will pitch to a decision-making team, some of which you will never meet. So your content that includes your proposal should include relevant outcomes for each level, and you should have something for each level in there so that they can cherry pick what is valuable for them. The easier that story is to share and reproduce, the better it will find traction in the organization, especially at the decision-making level. So you want to make sure that if you go into a company at a certain layer and they need to pitch up or down, you need to give them that information for those three layers. And the reason I call it Spice Girls marketing is that fans of the Spice Girls like the music, but they always had one favorite. And the same thing should be true for your content, including your proposal. There should be something for everybody, and everybody should have their favorite part in there. All right, third insight. Choice engineering is a shortcut to commitment. People want a fair deal, just like monkeys. There was a really interesting research done years back on moral behavior in animals. And I've got a link to the video if you want it. What they did is they tested to see if things like compassion or fairness would be present in animals. And it is. What they did is they took two capuchin monkeys and they have them solve a puzzle. In this case, they have to give a rock to the researcher. And once they do that successfully, they get a reward. Now, the monkey on the left got a cucumber and the monkey on the right got a grape. Now, grape is sweeter, has more sugar, has more energy. So that's the preferred reward. Within a couple of tries, the monkey on the left got really agitated, started shaking the cage, started throwing the cucumbers back at the researcher because he noticed, or she noticed, that this was not fair. The same request was done, and that monkey was getting a different reward. Now, the brain is really bad at judging absolutes when it comes to fairness. It needs something to compare things to. So when you're talking about fairness, be careful about binary choices. If you say, well, you can either sign this or you don't sign this, the only way you've done is given me a reduced way to exert power. And the only thing I can do to exert power is say no. I can exert power and authority by refusing your offer. Also, because I've got nothing to compare you with, I'm going to start shopping around. I'm going to start looking for other value points. Like if you ask me, this is my day rate. If you tell me this is my day rate, I'll look around with what's a typical day rate for other things. And if I don't have any comparison points of other people in your field, I'm going to start comparing you to my plumber or my barber. all due respect for plumbers and barbers, but if you're doing a digital marketing plan for a $3 million company, that has a different value than a haircut. So make sure that there's no binary choice. People love to have more of an idea of power, and they don't want you to drive the bus all the time. They want to have their own input in that. On the other end of the spectrum, too many choices will overwhelm people. They did research of people that came from a planned economy, think like North Korea, that went to an open market economy where there's a lot more choice in retail, for example. If you've ever tried to shop for a drink in the US, you know exactly what that is. You got like 87 flavors and you go like, oh, I'm stressed now. I have too many choices. So you want to make sure that your offering is not overly complex and that it takes a lot of mental work to puzzle together what they want. Too many modules, too many things, too many options. What works really well, and something they use at Apple all the time, is the good, better, best, right? Give them three options. And what you're doing there is you're giving them comparison points, but they're comparing your price with you, right? And your core offering, the thing that you like to do most, is in the middle. That is a great value. That's what you make most money on. And you put something more expensive to the right, you put something less expensive to the left. It helps it helps people make a good decision. And it eliminates the option of doing nothing or saying no. If you've got kids, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Insight number 4, you can use nonlinear pricing to maximize your close rates. So a good idea is to build a pricing slope. A pricing slope is the difference between your good, better, and best offer. And your core offering, as I mentioned, is what you like selling the most. The low value, that is cheaper, but it involves very little work for you. And its job is to make the core offering look more valuable. Then you have a high one, which is maybe more work for you, but very expensive. And its job is to make the core offering more affordable. And if somebody signs for the expensive option, by all means, go for it. I used to have a long-term projects, and the value was so high there that people would keep buying those. I had to stop doing it because I was filling my calendar up too quickly. What's important here is when you're building a pricing slope is not to make it linear. You don't want to have this is valuable, this is like twice as valuable, this is 3 times as valuable. You want that to be exponential. You want the basic option to be almost worthless, so people don't buy it. You want the middle version to be something you can execute on quickly and well. This is like your comfort zone. And you want the expensive option to be horribly expensive. So that people will gravitate towards what you like selling most, which is the middle option. And if you've got somebody who does it, at least you're making good money off of that. There's also the concept of decoy pricing, where you just introduce a price haphazardly to basically give people a comparison point. But if you've got a good, better, best offer with non-linear pricing slope, that's a very good practice. When we're talking about pricing, I don't want to go too deep because there was a lot said about that already. It's a good idea to discuss your pricing very early in the process. You don't want to surprise them with your price. So you want to talk to them first and say, listen, this is what you're going to get, right? These are the results, the outcomes. This is how much I charge for that. Are you okay with that? And just ask for that approval before you send it. Because once you send the proposal, you will not be in the room to defend it. So you want to make sure that they signal that they're okay with that. Even before you talk about pricing, you think about anchoring as well. We've all been taught in negotiations for salary, for example, that whoever mentions the first number is going to lose. I disagree with that quite strongly. Actually, the first time you mention a price, there's going to be something called price shock. Right? People are going to go, oh, that's expensive. And you want to give them something like that to react upon, like a lightning rod, to take that off the table before you mention your own pricing. So what I do typically is somebody says, how much is this going to cost? Do a messaging project. It's going to take me about a month, X many days. These are the deliverables. These are the effects you're going to have. That's all nicely packaged. What's it going to cost? They say, well, yeah, listen, before we talk pricing, if you do this with a traditional agency, this is going to cost you between 15 and 60 grand. And you're not going to have any really good deliverables that you can execute on. So what I've done is I've given them the price shock, but it's not my price. It's somebody else's price. And then I say, I'll do it for a fraction of the cost, and this is what you'll be getting. So I always say if you need to discount, it's because you didn't anchor first, because that shock is going to be applied to your price. And then people are going to say, well, I want to pay less than that. So what I do is I say, well, this is what a typical agency asks for that, which is a lot. And I've got a folder of offers to prove it, proposals from agencies to prove it. But that's the price shock. So my price all of a sudden is much better in comparison. All right, insight number 5. A good proposal creates a sense of urgency. In 100% of the cases, and all of my customers, they always ask me, like, how do we create urgency? Our deals are not going fast enough. The customer doesn't feel the urgency. Well, from a neuroscience standpoint, urgency is a result of legitimate scarcity. Why is water a priority in the desert? Because there is none. It's scarce, right? What you have to be careful about is that scarcity has to be legitimate. I'll give you an example of one of the companies I worked with. We had a deal out and the customer was stalling. He wasn't signing and we were chasing him all the time. And the deadline passed. So we said, sorry, that's no longer valid. And 2 days later, the client mailed back and said, well, we're ready to sign now at the price you originally agreed. And don't mess with us like that, because they knew that the scarcity was not legitimate. It was constructed. We just gave them a date to be ready by. And one of the things I always say, if you want to create scarcity, is never walk into a sales conversation without a limited supply of something. If you remember the toilet paper panic of 2020, toilet paper got very, very valuable all of a sudden because there was a scarcity. And I once posted this exact same comment in as a reply to a post by a sales consultant in Belgium who said, how do we create urgency? I said that, and there was an immediate reaction like, well, that's very old school and very manipulative, and I would end the relationship immediately. Fine, then don't sell, and by the way, chakras and sounding bowls are not marketing instruments. So what you want to do is make sure you've got a limited supply of something, because finite resources create urgency. While stocks last is a very good urgency creator. My calendar is filling up quickly is a very good urgency creator. For a lot of freelancers, time is what you're selling when you come to it. So you want to make sure that there is a limited supply of that. And I had a waiting list a couple of months ago, and I never sold more than when my calendar was full, because there was this immediate scarcity. So people would pre-commit to doing a project with me. All right, final insight. Number 6, bomb-proof your proposals. These are a couple of strategies that you can do to bomb-proof your proposals. First off, the 2 key words here is as discussed, right? A really good proposal is nothing more than a simple confirmation of stuff that you've already talked about live. The reason why that's the case is that you can't convince people with a proposal. A piece of paper or a PDF is not going to be as persuasive in a discussion as you are. You want to make sure there's no surprises, and you want to make sure that there are some standard parts, like this is what you need, these are the outcomes, these are my deliverables, this is what I will do and when I will do it, and this is how much it's going to cost. Those are like standard. But what I like to do as well is like, is there anything else you'd like in this proposal? And this could be something about copyright transfer, or this could be something about payment, or this could be something about timing. What I do is I put that in the proposal, and it gives them an idea that they've controlled or co-created the proposal. It has the bare bones, and I ask them, what else would you like? Are we missing something that you want in the proposal in writing before we start? So another way to bomb-proof your proposal and increase your close rates is schedule your follow-ups even before you send the proposal. Remember, a proposal is a written confirmation of stuff that you've discussed live. At the end of that discussion, before I even make the proposal, I say, when should I follow up on this? And that gets rid of the problem of following up. Like, should I call? Should I not call? Just say, listen, when should we follow up on this? And I'll send you an invite. Let's put it in the calendar and just follow up on that. And then there's no way out of this. They've got 2-3 weeks to think about it, or 2-3 days to think about it, depending on what you're selling. I like to do this because hope is not a strategy. I don't like to send out a proposal and hope for the best. Another technique is to make your proposals brain friendly. Now, the brain is the largest consumer of energy, glucose in your body. And it doesn't like to burn calories. It tries to be very, very efficient. So what I like to do is when I have a proposal that's quite long, I'll build a 1-page cover with all the key points on it that is very, very scannable, a lot of bold text on it. And you can make things bold and underline that they have requested in the proposal, so that they see their input very clearly. Okay, they've listened to me, they've modified the proposal. I don't need to tell you this, right? Your terms and conditions are really one part of the proposal. You always, always, always include them. I put them into every email that has a proposal in it as a PDF attachment. My proposals are simple emails. I CC myself, so then there's a track record of them understanding that the terms and conditions apply. I put that in text as well. Can't be modified. And I cannot tell you how many times this has saved my skin when there was a discussion afterwards as to when payment was due and things like that. Never had a customer not pay me, but there were like sometimes they were a little bit late and you had to put some pressure on it, etc. Then a very important one is when you send a proposal, your customers need guidance. You need to tell them exactly how to accept your proposal. So I say, this is how you accept the offer. In my case, send me an email, reply to this email stating that you want to proceed and include your invoicing details. These are very clear things that indicate that they are okay to start and that they're okay to get an invoice. So that's the yes. If everything is okay with you, just send back an email with your intent to start and your invoicing details. If you have any questions, if they're not going to accept, I'll give them a second CTA. If you're not going to accept, call me. If you have questions, call me, right? And by the way, I will follow up with you as discussed on that date. And if I don't hear from you by then, I will call you at regular intervals. What they need to know is that I'm not going to go away, right? This is not going to die a quiet death. If I'm going to go away, they're going to tell me to go away. And finally, you are not in the business of proposal building. Like, remember, you're getting 0 cents to make a proposal. So if you're putting all that work in there, making it really beautiful, etc., you want to be careful that it doesn't turn into a job in and of itself. So I use templates. A proposal for me is copy paste, 2 minutes work, and it's out the door. And I would urge you to do the same. Work with a beautiful template. If you're a designer, have that ready, and just send that over. All right, with that, let's open to questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Pete. You are the first who got the crowd a bit silent because they were so impressed with both your presentation and apparently your voice is very intriguing as well, because people say that you should start a business according to your voice while presenting.
Wow, I'll take this as a compliment. Thank you.
I already asked in the chat to ask questions, so I'm glad you asked it as well. I do have noted down some questions myself while presenting. In your presentation, you talked about talking about the pricing early stage, the proposal, but from a practical point of view, do you then give a range, or are you that prepared that you already know this is within their budget?
It's either a range or it's like the 3 pricing good, better, best. Wow. Now, I'm a former sales guy, right? So I was on commission. I have no time for this pricing bullshit, and I do not have any patience with procurement or negotiators. A price for me is a qualification instrument. Like, if I name you my price and you go like, oh shit, I'm out of the door, right? Because I'm not going to spend any more time on that. I'd rather chase people that when they see the price, they go, oh yeah, that's within budget. I had to learn that a little bit. Split my pricing over multiple months so I use project pricing, but I split it up into multiple months so that the total sum is the same, but cash flow wise, it's much easier for them to put that into a 2-3 month trajectory. But I'm very clear and very open about pricing. I give very little room for negotiation. So I'm cheap, right? I don't have a big overhead. I'm not a big agency. I don't have a big, corporate cars and offices to pay for. So in comparison to agencies, I'm usually cheap. And then you anchor it. There's less of a problem. But yeah, I do like to be very transparent about my pricing.
Okay, thank you for that. Emma was asking about the terms and conditions. What do you do when the other side, the client, also has its own terms and conditions? How do you handle this awkward moments?
Well, I don't, but there's a little phrase in my terms and conditions that says, if there are multiple sets of terms and conditions, mine prevail under all circumstances. So there's nobody ever reacts to that. And my terms and conditions are not, they're just standard, right? But I make sure that there is a clause in there that I can always fall back on my own terms and conditions. And when somebody says, okay, these are my terms and conditions, or these are my NDA, I take a really hard look at those because I built the model that I use called 5 Intents. It's based on 25 years of sales and marketing experience in a lot of brain science studies. And my terms are very clear. Like all the intellectual property of that model remains with me, right? You get a license to use it perpetually, but the IP is mine. And it wouldn't be the first time that somebody sends me terms and conditions that say, well, all the IP will transfer to me. And I go, no, not going to happen. So sometimes you have to be a little bit careful. Same thing with the NDA. I do a mutual NDA and I don't sign NDAs that say, well, if you say anything about this project, you owe us 200 grand. I'm like, no, we let the courts decide. So there's a little bit of back and forth there. Never been a big problem. People take a look at the terms and conditions. They go like, oh yeah, this is standard stuff. This is fine. It looks like ours, so it's fine. So T's and C's has never been a real problem so far.
Okay. Walter asks the following question. How do you handle price rejections on your proposal, even after you gave them an anchor during the live meeting?
That's a good one. I haven't had that very often. In the beginning, I was very, very flexible. Like once I think 3 years ago, I did a job where they were pre-seed. So this is a startup, just started, didn't have any cash flow, had a great idea though. So I knew it was going to work. And I said, listen, you're not going to pay me now, but there's a point in the future where you're gonna get funding, and my invoice becomes due the day you get funding. Sure enough, 2 years later, they paid me, but it's not something you can do consistently. So I think if you're talking to people and they basically start moving on price or start negotiating about price, it's you haven't qualified your client well enough, right? If it's like two people in a garage, I'm going to look at how they're funded. I'm going to look at what their spend potential is. If it's a big company and they're not willing to pay like my dirt cheap rates, I don't even want to work with them, you know?
Great. I think I agree on that last one. If you don't want to pay us, don't work with them. Delphine,
Exactly.
Delphine asks the question, do you have any tips about how to do it best when you have to come back to prospect because you didn't get any news after your proposal? Like how fast are you following up? I know that you made it clear in your proposal itself, but how do you do it actually?
So I like to have remember the pricing that was exponential? I'd like to do that with the intervals as well. So first I'm going to follow up like once a week, then I'm going to follow up once every 2 days, and then it's every day for a week. And then at that point in the fourth or fifth email, the typical one there is, this is the last email I will send you, right? And that's the one they reply to. For some reason, it's not urgent enough until you say, I'm about to throw this whole thing in the bin and not ever talk to you. And then they go, no, I was busy, please, so I like to give them some time again, like pre-commit first. We're going to talk at that point. If we miss that, I'm going to start following up once every week, and then every 2 days, and then every day for 3 or 4 times. And the fourth time is like, this is the last you will hear from me.
Yeah, and I remember I talked to a fellow freelancer, Aaron, who in that last email, he actually created like a button, a multiple choice. Apparently, you're not interested. Why? And it makes it easy for clients to just click on a button. That's the reason, because they're kind of ashamed, maybe, I don't know, to actually tell it live to you. I'm not doing it because of this.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting because so I work with a lot of founders, a lot of startups, and some of these people are freshly minted engineers. So social skills maybe not very high on the agenda in civil engineering, et cetera, and data science, but never had that. Never had a customer that maybe I'm just a really nice guy and they're not afraid of me. I don't know.
Yeah, well, so maybe I will introduce you to him. He's also into sales, by the way.
Oh, very good.
I'm going to introduce you to him. A next question, because we still have time. Veronica, again, Pete, awesome presentation. How do you tackle very long emails with TNCs and proposal in one? Like make the reading simpler and encourage the prospect to reply fast?
So there, the concept of above the fold, I think, is a really powerful one. Where so above the fold is actually from my print days. Above the fold is when you buy a newspaper. It's folded in half, and the stuff that's above the fold, that's like the top news, because then you can see it when it's on the stack. And above the fold in the digital world is stuff you can see without scrolling. So stuff you can see without scrolling on the email. I make sure that the core things, so this the synthesis of everything I want them to know, and the CTA is above the fold before they have to start scrolling. And then everything else goes deeper than that. People really like a simple overview of things. I don't, I try not to bury things like the CTA or like the description too deep in the email. People don't have time, right? So they skim through an email. They go, this is what you need to do by then. A lot of bold text, a lot of short bullet points. I almost never use full sentences. It's like, this is what I'll do. This is what you'll get. And you just bullet points, right? Very, very simple, takes very, very little room. I've noticed that the longer you make a document, the harder it is to get a commitment.
Yeah, okay, good to know. And in the same kind of field, Delphine asks, okay, you follow up the proposal very fast and exponential, as you told, but do you put any kind of deadline in your proposal? This proposal will be okay until that date?
Well, that's an example of what I would call non-legitimate scarcity, because you're putting a deadline on there for no reason, right? This is valid until then. Why? So I give them the why. I basically say, listen, I'm about to sell the days that I've blocked off for you. I'm about to sell them to somebody else because I didn't hear from you, right? That is legitimate. And if I don't hear from you by that day, I'm going to free up those dates and sell them to somebody else. That says a number of things. It says there is legitimate scarcity, right? There's a reason behind the deadline. And two, it says I'm a very busy person, right? And I've told customers in the last quarter I had a waiting list, and I said, listen, I'd love to work with you, but it's going to be July. And this was in May, right? This was in April, May. I was like, I'd love to work with you, but I can't do it until July. And that's when they started closing really quickly, because they didn't want to be late to think about it and then end up in September, right? September is when they want the first results. So yes, I do put in a deadline, but it's always based on real world situations where I can explain why that deadline is there. There's a reason behind it.
Okay, Jenny has a challenging question for you. Can you give an example for a freelancer of creating a proposal a la Spice Girls?
Yes. So if you've got a proposal that is multi-layered, right? Just name it like that and say, listen, you've got something. I'm trying to think of an example, right? You've got ERP software, right? ERP software runs your whole company, very difficult, long decision process, lots of stakeholders, finance, procurement, and only big companies buy that stuff. So, okay. So you say, this is our offering, or this is my freelance offering. This is what that will mean for the user. This is what that will mean for the team lead manager. And this is what that will mean for the owner slash CEO of the company. And you put in outcomes, measurable outcomes of that, right? You'll have happier people. So operational layer, happier people, better retention. You give them the effect of what you'll be doing at that layer, right? For management, you will get a better ability to execute. You will be able to do more with the same people. You won't have to staff up, because staff is unfindable these days. It's a common theme with everybody, right? You can't find people. So this software will allow you to do things without having to staff up and throw human capital at it by automating things, for example. And then if you look at the strategic level, it's all about, this is going to make your company future-proof. This is going to make you ready for all challenges that are coming. Will let you report on your ESG, on your sustainability goals, for example. You just think of what is in those layers, what is the core priority of an individual at that layer, and then respond to that. I want a better life. I want a better team. I want a better company, and show them exactly how you do that and put that into the offering, so that, and sometimes you do it in a specific page for people. Like some of the offerings I see from clients are almost like mini books, right? They look really beautiful, and they have like a page for management. They have a page for strategic. They've got a page for finance sometimes, because sometimes within those layers there's subdivisions. Finance has a different priority than HR. HR has a different priority than CEO, right? So you put something in there, for example, for all of those. Don't go too far because you can end up with a messaging matrix that's quite complex. But do something for each layer, and the core decision makers and influencers on each layer should have their outcome specifically for that.
Okay, thank you for that. Ching wants to know what to showcase as your storefront if the majority of your work is confidential.
That's a difficult one. That is a very, very difficult one. So I dealt with some confidentiality issues myself as well. And what I did is I negotiated with the client, like, what can I show? What can I say? And sometimes it's like nothing. You can't even say that you've been here, right? Most customers are really happy because what I do is it's kind of, people like to think about it and talk about it like neuroscience. It's very hip and trendy. So people like to show that they've done this exercise with me. So they're really happy to share content. But in some cases, in some industries, it's like very, very difficult to get a showcase. In that case, what you could do is do an anonymized one. So it's one that you're not selling, but you invent a fictitious company and you say, this is what that would look like. So when I was, there was a startup that I worked with that had very specific graphic art software. And a lot of the clients that we had were like super tight on security, like banks, Airbus, Coca-Cola. You could not even talk about this. I'm probably violating an NDA by speaking about it now, but you couldn't show anything. So what we did is we invented a fictitious brand. First it was beer, and then it was mineral water, and we just showed what the thing could do on this fictitious brand. And it looked like a real brand, but it did show everything without having to show actual things. And when you've got confidentiality agreements, by all means mention that. Like, listen, the kind of customers I work with have me sign confidentiality agreements, so I can't share you with it. That gives you an immediate air of trustworthiness, because if a big company that requires a confidentiality agreement agrees with your offering, you must be good, right? That's the upside. The downside is it's an invitation to give you one, right? If you say, well, a lot of my customers have confidentiality agreement, here's ours, you can't speak about it now. So again, in my terms and conditions, it states very clearly, I am allowed to reference you unless you instruct me formally otherwise, right? I'm allowed to use your logo. I'd still check it with them out of politeness, but in the terms and conditions, it states that I can talk about you either in person or I can talk about you anonymized. So if I say, for example, the largest aerospace manufacturer in Europe and a direct competitor of Boeing, you'll know who I'm talking about. If I say it's the second largest soft drinks manufacturer and a direct competitor of Pepsi, you know who I'm talking about. There's ways around that, basically.
Okay, good to know. And I think the final question from Lindsay, she's working with the CRM and she's as soon as a client accepts a proposal, automatically a contract is generated.
Oh, nice.
What are your opinion on that when have everything bundled together with the proposal?
I love it. Anything you can do to eliminate work that is not invoiceable is great. Anything you can do to automate that, because let's face it, it's boring. Contracts are boring, right? I know some people get really excited about that, but contracts are basically boring. And whatever you can do to save you that time of like building the whole package and sending it over, and then if you can automate that with your CRM, definitely do it. CRMs are really smart. They can build contracts with modules in it that you can switch on and off very, very easily. So yeah, I love all that kind of automation, and I'll probably do it myself once I get around to it.
Okay, thank you. And I see that Sana is celebrating because you talk with a lot of passion about automation and tools and so on, which is, I think, right in her alley.
Yeah.
So again, Piet, very, very, very big thank you for being here today. I think this was a very, very interesting presentation, both the format, but definitely also the content. I would like to thank you. If again people want to reach out to Piet, know that he's not available until September. We know that from now. But if you want to reach out to Piet, connect with him on LinkedIn, reach out to him. He will be more than happy to help you forward.